Thank you. I want to thank all of you for being here. This is obviously a very, very important topic, and certainly where I live in Nashua, New Hampshire, is 45 minutes away from where these bombings occurred. And in fact, a lot of the law enforcement officers in New Hampshire went down. The Manchester SWAT team, the Nashua Special Reaction Team, the New Hampshire State Police, and Seacoast Emergency Response Team. And of course, so this is local for us, and in fact, Jeff Bauman, who's really a hero in these circumstances, his family lives in New Hampshire, and he was heroic that day, and everything that he's suffered, and all of the victims. So I really appreciate the work that you've done on this, because this is incredibly important for the country. I wanted to ask about, first of all, the JTTF issue. When Commissioner Davis came before our committee, that was where he focused his attention. He was very concerned, and I know you've talked about it in your report as well, about the fact that on the JTTF task forces, and I served as Attorney General, so I worked with that task force in that capacity, that it was too much of a one-way street. That, in other words, the information coming in wasn't then communicated downward. And as all of you know, it's really the line police officers on the street that are likely to encounter this type of individual first. So can you help us understand where do you see, what improvements have been made at this point with regard to JTTF communication issues in terms of the type of back and forth that Senator Coburn also talked about are necessary to make sure that that information first flows downward, but then also flows back upward once that police officer on the ground receives information?
Let me take that first, at least, Senator. It is an important part of this report and our finding, and we had the good fortune and benefit of hearing from Commissioner Davis in the course of our work, who described to us many of his concerns that you've outlined. And one of the things we noted specifically in our report was the failure of the FBI, when an incident or issue like this came up as to a person, to alert those local officers, the community that could be impacted by an individual like that, both from the standpoint of learning if they had information back, but also allowing them to be prepared if there were any particular issues or concerns. We also heard from Commissioner Davis about the concern that the information was flowing one way, but also that there was a general attitude on the JTTF that you only gave information to the locals if there was a need to know, not as part of a routine relationship, not as something that occurred regularly, but on a need-to-know basis. And the likelihood was that unless it was very clear there was a need to know, that wasn't happening as frequently as it could. We understand that the FBI has sent memos out and is addressing that now. That is a recommendation we've made, and that is something we will be following up on.
So they're already taking steps to implement better information sharing?
We've been told that, and as we do in all of our work, we will follow up and make our own conclusion on whether that's been effective.
Well, I will tell you this, that the memo is important, but it's also the attitude. So having worked in cases where it's federal, state, local, sometimes county as well, the attitude, I think, that we need to get at, that's the pre-9/11 attitude of sort of, we're going to hold this information in as the FBI, as opposed to really realizing that we have all these partnerships of people who are on the street every day that can help us and we can work together. And so I've talked to Director Comey about this, and I'm hoping that in addition to changes in policy, that it's really an outreach issue by the FBI to reach out to the heads of the JTTF task forces as well as the local officers to really say, we get it. We really understand how important this is in terms of preventing terrorist attacks and other types of criminal behavior, even beyond terrorism. So, so I think that that attitude issue, I'd love to see, as you look at this issue and the follow-up with the FBI, what is it that the local officers feel has been the attitude change on the ground, because that's what's going to make the biggest difference here.
Right, and that is what Commissioner Davis mentioned as well, and it clearly is the culture of the organization and the culture of the relationship that's critical. You can put all the rules in place that you want, but if folks don't feel like they should be talking to one another, it just won't happen.
Can I also suggest that engaging the U.S. attorneys and also engaging the attorneys generals on this, so at the state law enforcement level, at the federal level, because I know when I served as our Attorney General, I had the role of being a chief law enforcement officer, so I could get very much my message across in meetings I had with law enforcement about how we were going to emphasize these issues. So I think this has to be a holistic approach where you're also engaging the prosecutors they work with on a regular basis to say, hey, this is important, and this attitude is what's going to help us protect America working together. So I appreciate that emphasis. You know, one thing that I looked at that is, I'm trying to understand, and to the extent that you are able to answer this in the open setting, but this follow-up issue on the CBP, and as they notify, you said it was done with a sticky, basically, the trip to Russia by Sarnev. Those procedures, as I understand it, have now been changed and formalized. Is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
So the question I have is, assuming that formal designation, how does the FBI then determine whether there will be a follow-up? Is there a procedure there? Is there a standard there that we can understand when the FBI is actually assuming formal notification from CBP, as they should be, not with some sticky?
Right.
So that's a very important improvement. Then will they make the decision on, we've got to go then do some more investigative work?
As it was then, and as I believe it still remains, it is the agent who gets notified, and it is their responsibility to make a determination as to whether to proceed. I think there is a strong argument to be made that in that situation, an agent should, at a minimum, be consulting with their supervisor when, particularly in an instance like this, the nub of the information sent to the FBI by the Russian authorities was, he is going to travel to Russia to join these groups, as we outline here. That's precisely what he did in January 2012 in terms of at least the travel. Don't know what he did there, but as to the information that went to the FBI that he is going to travel to Russia, that's exactly what information was learned because of the ping and the notice that went on.
Absolutely. This seems like pretty compelling information from the Russians. So I would hope that it wouldn't, particularly on something of this importance, wouldn't just be left with the discretion of the agent, that you actually would have some type of consulting to make sure that in those circumstances we do have a follow-up investigation that needs to be conducted to find out what his activities were in Russia, and in fact, did he meet with these groups that are associated with terrorist activities? Because that would have probably changed to some extent the view in which he was, the prism upon which he was viewed.
Correct. And that's correct, because it also in part corroborated the information that had been sent to the FBI, so it demonstrated some credibility on that information. It could have resulted in additional follow-up within the United States. It also could have resulted in a notice to the foreign country, to Russia, in response to the information they had sent to us.
Thank you very much. I know my time is up, and I think this is a very important issue. I want to thank both the chairman and the ranking member for holding this hearing and for the work done by the all of the inspectors generals here. Thank you.